Let's get joined up. I'm Wayne Kelly, and this episode is sponsored by Picklock Publishing, the imprint behind my debut novel Safe Hands, which tells the story of Mickey Blake, a retired safecracker pulled out of retirement for one last job, and Hazel, a desperate mother driven to kill to protect her son from being sucked into a life of crime. It's out now to buy on Kindle and in paperback, and if you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you can read the book for free. That's Safe Hands by W.A. Kelly. Right, that's enough advertising. Cue the theme tune.
Joined up writing.
Hello and welcome to the Joined Up Writing podcast, where a little procrastination can go a long way. Now, I'm Wayne Kelly and it's episode 219 with Merle Nyegate, TV screenwriter and novelist, returning to talk about her new espionage novel, Among Spies. We talk about themes, structure, writing a sequel, and before we get to that, what have I been up to since our last episode? Well, writing, of course, still hacking through the first draft of the follow-up to Safe Hands, which is now terrifyingly already available for pre-order. That comes out on December 30th, which scares me to death as I still have so much to do between now and then. But hey, that's what deadlines are for, or as Douglas Adams always used to say, he used to love the sound that they make as they whoosh past. As well as that, I attended my first event as a published author, the excellent States of Independence in Leicester. I had a stand where I was signing books and getting to meet loads of readers, writers, and anyone passionate about books. I really enjoyed it, and I was hoarse by the end of the day, so that tells you I had a lot of great conversations. I've also been working on new material for 2 workshops I've got planned for the autumn. Both of them are kind of coming off the back of requests and responses I've had from other writers and people who attended my first big screen workshop. One is on structure, which is something Merle and I talk about today, and the other one is an introduction to indie publishing. Because there are a lot of writers who would like help with independently publishing their work, and so I'll be giving them a rundown of the technicalities, the creative aspects, and what they need to bear in mind in terms of cover art and editing and promotion. And in that same vein, I'm currently offering cover design and book formatting services to new indie authors. I've been told that the introductory price is way too cheap, so if you want a bargain, head over to my WayneKellyWrites.com website and click on the Indie Publishing tab. And on top of all that, I'm doing my first live joined up writing event. It's only taken me 10 years to get round to doing that. Recording an interview with crime writer Helen Cooper in front of a live audience at Leicester Central Library. In fact, that will be happening on the day this podcast is released, so wish me luck, and I'll let you know how it goes in the next intro. Look out for the episode itself as well, which will be out in a few weeks. So that's me, but what about you? What have you been up to? What have you been reading? Maybe you want me to mention your project or your workshop or something else, then drop me a line and let me know. As you know, I love to hear from you and I will always reply. And you can do that by emailing me, wayne@waynekellyWrites.com, or dropping me a line on the Facebook or Twitter pages. And if you sign up to my monthly newsletter at Wayne Kelly Writes, you'll get a free ebook with 2 new crime stories, along with a monthly email about all things books, writing, and podcasts. Right. Let's crack on. It's time for today's interview with Merle Nyegate. Merle is a screenwriter, script editor, screenwriting lecturer and novelist. She's worked on BAFTA-winning TV, New York Festival audio drama, and she's written original sitcoms. She's done it all. She previously worked for BBC Comedy Commissioning, as well as writing and script editing across multiple genres. Merle's first novel, The Righteous Spy, won the Little Brown UEA Crime Fiction Award, and is now followed up with the excellent Among Spies, which I've read and loved, and that's out right now. So, enjoy the chat, and I'll be back at the end to wrap things up.
Joined up writing.
Okay, Merle, thanks so much for joining me again, returning to Joined Up Writing after a few years. why don't you just start off just telling us where you're speaking from and tell us how things are going at the minute?
Okay, well, I'm speaking from Surrey on a rainy early evening, and things are going well. My book has been out, or the new book's been out since April the 11th, and that seems to be going well. And I had a very cool thing happen to me yesterday, which I have to tell
All
you.
right. Yeah, go for it.
This is a first. All right, so I was in central London in Marylebone, and just doing nothing much. And I went into Daunt's bookshop in Marylebone High Street
Hmm.
just to go in there, and I saw my book on the table.
Oh, wow.
And it was so cool.
Did you get a photograph or
Yeah, of
anything?
course I did.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, and then, if anybody was standing near the table, I was saying that is a really good book. If I were you, I would pick that book up.
I spy a really good book there. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a very, very
Oh, I
nice.
bet that made your day, didn't it?
It did. It made yesterday, and it made today as well. Yeah.
So I take it that never gets old for you. Obviously, this is your second book, but that never gets old. Then seeing your book out in the wild.
That is, I saw the book in a local bookshop in Surrey, but I knew it was, or I sort of knew it was going to be there because a friend of mine had ordered the books
Yeah,
from the bookshop. But this was completely, I mean, a random,
lovely surprise.
And Daunt's is such a cool bookshop. I mean,
Yeah.
it's such a lovely, lovely bookshop. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Well, on that very subject, that most recent novel, why don't you tell us what that is? So, Honor Among Spies. Tell us about that. It's the follow-up to The Righteous Spy. So, tell us all about that.
Okay, so at the end of The Righteous Spy, Ellie Amaran, he really wanted to get the job as head of London Station. So in Honor Among Spies, he's got the job, and he's now head of Mossad's London Station, and he's trying to hold on to this job, but there's lots of internal politics going on. And to secure his position, he comes up with an audacious scheme, which is to sell doctored drones to Russia. But to do this, he has to betray his wife. So he does, and then it all, obviously goes terribly wrong.
It's never going to go right if you betray your wife, is it? I mean, that's
No, that is a very good point. You see that?
for how bright he is. I mean, that's his first mistake.
Yeah, but it's irresistible because
Of course.
she's a psychologist who specializes in post-traumatic stress disorder, and the agent he wants to recruit is the father of one of the children that she is trying to help. So how can he resist it?
And that, as you say, the honor and the duty that he feels
Yes,
to his job
yeah,
and his country and everything else,
yeah,
that kind of overrides everything.
yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I loved it. I finished it last week or the week before or whenever it was that I finished reading it. I read the first book as well, and it's a great follow up, and it's building on all these different characters and themes. And last time he came on, which is we were talking about it before, but I actually can't believe it was in 2019. It feels like it was sort of a year or two ago or something. But you did talk then a little bit about theme and how that was a big thing for you when you write books and scripts or whatever. So, why do you think theme is important? The way you described it last time was it's this torch that kind of lights the way for you. What would you say is the theme for this story, and why do you think that's such an important part of what you do when you're writing?
Well, okay, I'm always trying to find easy ways of writing.
Yeah,
Okay,
you and
so
me both.
and for me, having understanding what the book is or the piece or the script or whatever it is about is the thing that at that point when you're in the middle of writing the thing and you're just like, oh my god, where is this thing going?
Mhm.
That is something that grounds me and something that I get back to. And in terms of this book, the theme, of course, is about well, it's not of course. I mean, it's about trust in relationships and how the job you do makes you the person you are. So, and of course, the job that Ellie is doing is actually compromising him.
Yeah.
because I mean, he's ruining his relationship because of the job.
Yeah.
And so, and I thought, I mean, we all know, like, I mean, as a writer, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wayne, but if you go to a party and somebody tells you this really interesting story, I bet you're thinking, gosh, that's interesting. I might be able to use that one.
Absolutely. Yeah. You file it
Okay.
away. You file it
Yeah,
away, definitely.
exactly. So this is what's happened to Ellie, is that the job is making him into somebody that he might not like. So that is the themes of the piece, and it's affecting all of them, and it's affecting Petra as well. She's not able to have a relationship with this guy who's very nice, who she's been having this thing with, because she can't be honest about who she is.
Yeah.
So it's about trust and honesty, and again, it's about relationships.
And you talked about that, as you say. I love that's a great way of describing it. Talking about making writing easier for yourself, and I totally know what you mean about that. Particularly, I find particularly in the edit, the first edit, particularly when you're going back to things, and it's thinking, hang on, what is this actually about? What's the book about?
Yeah,
And that can it should sort of inform the changes that you make, especially on that first edit. I find it's like, okay, well, that needs to be stronger there, or
yeah,
that thing, because I often find I've got lots of, because I think I mean, everyone's different, but you tend to throw everything at the first draft.
yeah,
Sometimes you think, I'll
yeah.
put that in, and I'll put
Yeah,
that in, and I'll put that in, and then when you go back and you think, hang on a minute, this is what the book's about, let's distill it down. So if that's the
yeah,
case, then all this little extraneous stuff here, that can come out, and you
yeah.
can just put the other stuff back in about the theme. So I think that's a really good way of looking at it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
And so you mentioned about Petra, and obviously both of them have kind of got these difficult choices, Ellie and Petra, and that's what I mean, I'm fascinated by that myself. This morally grey area that
yeah,
people often find themselves in, and I think espionage and crime are brilliant genres to kind of look at that. Um, and so what is it what is it for you? Why do you like setting these kind of challenges for your characters, and how do you approach the writing of them? Because let's be honest, it's one thing writing the setup of these things and putting them into these situations, but then as the writer, you've got to work out how you're going to extricate them from them, or at least kind of
yeah.
resolve things by the end of the book.
Well, in in The Righteous Spy, I mean, okay, one of the things I repeatedly do in my writing, and I think so many people do, is I have issues with motivation.
Hmm.
And so in this book, I was very clear that I wanted to give them clear goals. And I think the thing to do with these moral dilemmas is that if they're outward motivation, their goal, their tangible goal that they have to achieve by the end of the narrative, if that's in conflict with their internal,
Yeah.
motivation,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that they keep sort of thinking, why am I doing this and I shouldn't be doing that? I mean, then you have a sort of very a very dynamic character who's against themselves, and so I kind of set that up quite carefully, so then they just get on with it, because you put them in the situation and that's what's going to happen, because in Honor Among Spies, Petra, for her own reasons, she recruits a young guy who gets into awful trouble.
Hmm.
And so it's but she feels bad about it, of course.
Yeah, she's asking herself why.
Yeah. Why am I doing this
Yeah.
exactly?
Yeah, and she is torn about it. And I
Yeah,
think I think that's what people like to see, though. I think they like to see the person actually struggling with it, because I think readers are masochists, and they want to see characters go through the ring. I mean,
yes,
writers
yeah,
definitely do. That's what
yeah,
we do, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah. Make it very hard for them. Yeah,
So this is, as you've kind of mentioned, this is a sequel. Like all sequels do nowadays, it has to work as a standalone as well. You could just pick up this book and off you go, and the story will make sense, and you've done it or whatever. How did you find that in general, writing the follow up? Because I mean, as somebody that's writing the second book of my series at the minute, I know it's walking that tightrope of it does have to work as a standalone story, but you also want to sow enough seeds of what happened in the first book to make people interested and obviously
Yes,
build on the
yeah,
work you've already done.
yeah,
So how did you find
yeah.
that? How did you approach it?
Okay, I found this book easier to write for lots of reasons. One was the process was different because the first book I wrote when I was doing the course at UEA,
Yeah.
and the the process was that you write 5,000 words and then you circulate it amongst your, peers, and then you had a close look at it and maybe rewrote it, and then you did the next 5,000 words.
Yeah.
So in this book, I went back to my screenwriting chops, as it were, and I wrote it as I would write a screenplay, which is like very intense research for like a month. And I had pictures of all the characters, I had pictures of all the locations. So whenever I get into a scene, I could just pull up the image and I know what the place looks like. So it was easier from that point of view, and it also meant I didn't have to stop. But also, of course, you have to reprise a bit of the stuff from the previous,
Yeah.
yeah. So you just drop it in here and there, and I mean, obviously, the beginning always gets rewritten a lot.
Yeah.
So the beginning was rewritten and made a bit darker. But that's really the place where you want to reprise what happened in the previous book.
Get it out of the way and move
Get
on
it
to
out of the
something.
way, exactly. Yeah,
Almost a bit like when you start watching the second series of something and it says previously on.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. In fact, it's exactly the same.
It's interesting that you say that your process changed like that, though, and that you kind of, because of, I mean, people can go back and listen to the first time you came on the show, but one of the things we talked about was your original background coming from writing scripts and screenplays and things. And it's interesting that, that's probably where you've had the most experience, I'm guessing, because you spent a lot of your
Yes.
career doing that.
Yeah.
And that, when push came to shove and you're writing this book, that's kind of what you went back to, and that's the process that works. And I think it's interesting as well that just because it's a different medium, that you kind of approached it the same and you found it, you slip back into the old way of doing it, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it is what I'm most comfortable doing. And when I do the draft, I write very, very, very fast because I've done the prep.
Yeah.
And in a very intense way. And and it's like every day, and I'm sort of, because you have that sort of like that rush of getting the story down. And then you afterwards, of course, you have to fix it and pull it apart and stick it back together again. Um, I mean, different writers approach things. Obviously, they have different process, and I'm in awe of the writers who sit down and don't quite know where they're going with the story. I know, or they think they know where it might end up, and they're not quite sure how they're going to get there. I just, it's beyond me how anybody could do that.
I mean, I've had this discussion with lots of people over the years coming on the podcast, and my theory on it, though, is that really we're all doing the same thing. It's just that we weight it in different ways in terms of where we do it in the process. Like I think you're doing exactly the same as somebody that pantses it, if you like, except that
Yeah,
you're not actually starting to write the novel as in you're drafting it and you go in chapter one and off you go. But you're that month or 2 months or however long it is you spend on that prep bit that you're talking about, you're still having to sit down and think, where is this story going? Here's my cast of characters. Where are they? And you're doing it, but you're just not doing it by writing the draft. You're just still having to do all the thought time. The thing is, I don't, there's so many different ways to do it, but I don't think you can avoid the thinking part. I think that's the bit. I think that's the bit. People that have never tried to write a book, I think that's the bit that people underestimate. Like people that don't write, I don't know whether you find this, but when you meet non-writers and you tell them what you do and all that kind of thing, they're always obsessed by how many words are
how long
in
did
your
it take
book.
you? How long did it take you? Yeah, and
Yeah,
where
and
did you get
they
the
just think,
idea from? Yeah,
and they just if you say, well, my book was nearly 100,000 words or whatever,
yeah,
they just think well, that's just takes a long time to write 100,000 words. And let's be honest, if somebody was dictating it to you or you were copying it, it wouldn't take very long to write 100,000 words at all.
No,
If you've got a decent typing speed or whatever, that's not the thing that takes the time. The thing that takes the time is thinking about it and coming
yeah,
up with the idea, and then, as you say, working out all these
yeah,
puzzles that you've set for yourself.
yeah,
I think that's the thing, and I think for a lot of people, like I'm halfway between. I'm not an out and out, just completely go by the seat of my pants. I like to have a rough idea of where I'm going, or some kind of theme or what I'm doing. And then what I tend to find is I just keep stopping along the way and
yeah.
sort of having to go, okay, what am
Okay,
I doing?
yeah,
Yeah, where
yeah.
am I going for the next third of the book?
Okay, and that makes me feel uncomfortable. Okay,
Yeah,
right,
it makes me feel uncomfortable. It's horrible, but
right, okay. So that's why I have this sort of, in fact, that's why in this book I found images of all the locations, like for example, Ellie's office at the embassy. I
yeah,
found
yeah.
all that stuff because I didn't want to start a scene and think, oh blimey, I don't know what this place looks like.
Yeah.
Or I didn't want to have a character where I don't know,
That
who.
is actually, yeah, that's a great idea. I do like that idea because one of the things I think, because I mean everyone have got different tastes in terms of what they read and stuff as well. I'm not a big fan of loads and loads of description myself. Like
Mhm.
I like a brushstroke. Like I want to know. I don't want it to be completely white wall. I need to get a sense of where I am in the
Yeah,
space and
yeah,
whatever. But two or three lines, and I'm like, okay, fine, I get the scope of
yeah.
the room. But so when I'm writing, sometimes it's like I'm the same. It's like, oh God, it's
Yeah,
right.
what
What
is
I've
this
got to
place?
describe.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've got to describe what's in the room
Yeah,
and if there's a table and
yeah,
blah blah.
yeah.
And you're right. It is much. It would be much easier to just do that. To just go, okay, there's that room and pull it up. And I'm the same as well with physical characteristics of people. Like I have done it because I use Scrivener, and you can.
I love Scrivener.
Oh,
Oh
I
God.
love it. I was going to ask you that, whether you use
Yeah,
Scrivener
no, I
when you
love
were
it. Yeah,
describing it. It's perfect for your way of writing as
yeah,
well, with
yeah.
all that prep and everything, because you can
Mm,
have all the files and you can
exactly.
and I've done it with character sheets before. I've had like photographs that I've just pulled off the internet somewhere and
Yeah,
said,
yeah,
or written, oh, this person's got green eyes, this person's got blue eyes, this person's
yeah.
got brown eyes. Because again, I always forget when I start writing.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
And so it makes sense from that point of view. But the weird thing is, if I'm writing a script, I would never in a million years think, oh, I'll just sit down and start writing a scene. I would never do that. But I don't know. So I don't know why I'm different when I start writing a book. I think it's because I have to get to know the characters. I think that's the way.
Well,
That,
okay, so the huge, huge benefit of writing a sequel is the
yeah,
characters,
exactly. Yeah.
and which is that, and what they look
And their
like, what they
voice. Yeah.
sound like,
Yeah.
what their backstory is, what their issues are, and that is a huge, that's such a big benefit.
Definitely. And I think, like, for me with my book too, it's the main issue that I had when I first started writing it was a couple of the main, well, one of the main characters in particular, although he's in the first book, he's not in the first book very much. So I kind of
Yeah,
had to get to know him. So
yeah,
that was kind of what slowed me down at the beginning. Once I kind of got a proper handle on who he was, I'm fine. But I kind
yeah.
of have to write my way into it as regards that. Um, so yeah, I totally, yeah, I understand that. But yeah, that's interesting that you kind of say you go back to the. I think that's good that you've kind of gone back to the process that you're comfortable with. And do you think going forward, do you think that's you now? That's what you're
For
going to do?
me, I mean, okay, so doing the 5,000 words and stopping, 5,000 words and stopping, that is, as a process, it doesn't suit me at all.
No.
Because, I mean, the other thing is that I find is that when I stop writing, like I say, I take a day off, okay, when I'm on a draft, it takes me 2 days to get back into it.
Yeah.
So this, like, stopping us, I need to, if I'm gonna, I need to be in that novel, I need to be in the narrative, I need to be thinking about that all the time. And as I said, stopping starting, it just doesn't work for me.
I'm totally with you, Merlin. Again, it's come up recently in a few chats that I've had with people, and I think I've been obsessed before with, I've got to do this amount of words every single day, and if I don't, then I've failed
Yeah,
and all that kind of thing. And then you start thinking, well, as long as I do on average over the whole week or the month or
Yeah.
whatever, however you start thinking about it. But to be honest, a much more productive, a useful thing for me is just doing something on it
Yep.
every day.
Yeah.
Even if one day it's 200 words or something,
Yeah.
it's like I've
Yeah.
still kept in touch with it
Yeah.
and I still know where I am. And it's much
Yeah.
quicker when I pick it up. And
Yeah.
once you get the momentum going,
Yeah.
you
Exactly.
then find you write 1,500 words or whatever anyway
Exactly.
without
Yeah.
thinking about it too much. But
Yeah.
yeah, because you have to you end up rereading it and you're like, where was I with
Yeah.
this and what's the
Yeah. And
voice
you
and the
forget.
tone?
Yeah. What's
Yeah,
going on? You know.
yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, I've done it. I've even done it in the past with other writing projects and things where if there's been a big gap, I've even almost rewritten something that I didn't know. I read back, I'll be rereading the draft and I'm like, hang on a minute.
I
I've,
don't remember that.
I've actually done this twice, just slightly different version, or
Yeah.
something's massively wrong with it because I've not missed. That's how you can make those kind of mistakes. So you go through this presumably. So you do a really quick first draft, and
Yeah.
then
Oh, yeah.
do
Go on.
you, at what point does it go to your editor, or do you do another
No.
couple of drafts?
Okay. So, all right. So there was research planning synopsis, and then the editor publisher says, "Yeah, that's fine." Then I do the draft. Okay. Then I have another look at the draft. So I mean, it's not like an absolutely filthy draft.
No, no, no.
And then it goes in, and then you get like a bundle of notes, and then you know, do the rewrite.
Yeah, yeah. And do you tend? I mean, I know obviously this is only the second book in the series or whatever, and you've had a slightly different process between book one and book two. But did you find similar kind of notes between the two books? Do you tend to be are there things because a lot of writers there'll be certain things, like some writers underwrite on their their first draft, or
Yeah.
they overwrite, or there's not enough character, whatever. Do you tend to have certain tropes or certain things that you kind of fall into?
Okay, so the length was fine, the structure's fine because I, like being a
Yeah.
structure Nazi. Um, but for me, and in both books, was an issue of tone.
Right.
Okay, so my default tone is sort of like a bit upbeat, and so
Yeah.
because it's a spy novel, you have to make it a bit darker.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had to on both books, I had to go back and sort of like tamp it down a bit.
That's because you're coming from a comedy background, though, isn't it?
I think so, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, in fact, yeah, there are parts in On Among Spies which I've been told are, funny. I mean,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. There's some funny dialogue and stuff in there.
yeah. Anyway, but I just had to make it a bit darker, and I had to make the Russian a bit more threatening, and all this sort of stuff.
So it tends to be that. So, I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, I know obviously there's the big elephant in the espionage room these days is Mick Herron. And obviously, his books, well, depending on which series or whatever that you read, is Slow Horses or whatever. Obviously, humor is a really, really big part
Yeah.
of those, isn't it? Do you ever sort of, not necessarily in this series, but if you were to do a different series, are you ever kind of longing to do stuff that's kind of got more of that lighter touch to it, or that you can kind of put more of the humorous side in it?
No, not really. I mean, I mean, you probably haven't come across it, or you may have come across it. But the book that I read just recently, and I thought, wow, that's a really amazing book, a spy book, is by somebody called Charles Beaumont.
No.
Oh, right, okay. So he was a proper MI6 guy, and it's a really, really very wonderful. I mean, it's a great book. It's a really, I mean, I urge you to get A Spy Alone. It's a terrific book.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like my research. I do want it to seem real. And I mean, and I do want my guys to have pensions and, sort of like, a domestic life.
You
Uh,
want it to be sort of more grounded in reality.
yeah, exactly. And I do want to have, the geopolitical stuff in there, which A Spy Alone has got that stuff in there, and it's very interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, in general, I mean, would you ever consider, or would you think about writing outside of the espionage? Have you got other genres that you want to tackle in general, or is this?
Um, there are two. I mean, I'm I'm very interested in historical um,
Oh yeah.
fiction, and there are two historical, actually, they're spy fiction projects which interest me. And so that's a possibility. And the only other thing I was thinking of doing, and this is a crazy idea, was just thinking, because I've worked in so many, I mean, I've been working for so long and I've worked in so many genres on, like TV and radio. I was just thinking about writing down all the stuff I know about.
Yeah.
And, so I've made some notes
I don't
about.
think that's a crazy idea. I think as well, I think people like being, I mean, you could argue that the spy thing has got this as well. I think that idea of this world that's not open to everybody, that's a little bit, that seems exotic. And you probably think, well, the TV world's not exotic to me, but that's because you've spent so much time in it, in the TV and the radio and stuff. But to a lot of people, what kind of goes on behind the scenes and all that
Yeah,
kind of thing, there's been, that's obviously why there are quite a few different shows and different bits and pieces, but there's not loads and loads of books that kind of do that, really, I don't
yeah.
think.
No, and I mean, and just frankly, the sort of stuff that we talk about, how writers approach things, best ways of doing something and things to avoid, and as I said, I thought, okay, because I mean, like radio, for example, I've done a
Hmm.
bit of that,
Yeah,
so I just thought that might be an interesting thing to do. If,
yeah. It will obviously time permitting, which is the problem with all of this, isn't it?
yeah, yeah,
You can only do so many things.
yeah, but I think that would be easier than writing a novel.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, Honor Among Spies and obviously Righteous Spy as well. They both sort of feel like they would translate well to TV or film or whatever. And obviously, as you've just talked about, you've got that background there in TV. Is that something that you've thought about in terms of adapting it yourself?
I,
And if you
I
would, how would you approach it?
Okay, if I was asked to do it, I would do it. Okay, because I mean,
Of
why
course, yeah,
turn down a job?
yeah,
Um, if I would. Okay, it's a very interesting question because I thought, okay, I would start off by finding out how many episodes I was going to do.
mm.
So predictably, I'll be going back to structure. Okay, so how am I going to
Yeah,
structure?
yeah,
It's got to have enough story beats. How do I make sure there's enough going on there? So I would do it in a kind of mechanical way if I was going to do that. Is it going to be 6? Is it going to be 8? Is it going to be 10?
hmm
50 minutes. So I start off looking at it like that. And of course, because presumably each book would be a series.
yeah, and then break it down into the
Yeah,
time
and
like
then
that.
break it down. Yeah.
But it's not something you do speculatively. You haven't got the time.
No, definitely. Wayne, I don't do anything speculative.
That comes from working years in TV. It's like,
Yeah,
well,
exactly. Yeah. Somebody said to me, oh yes, she said, why don't you, sort of write a few scenes? And I said, and why would I do that?
oh yeah, you've been around the block too many times for all that
Exactly.
messing about. Yeah, I totally understand. So if you were adapting it, the way that you would approach it, and I mean, it's not something you've thought about because you've been writing in the medium that you've been writing in. You've been writing it for a book. But in terms of like, if you think we're thinking of, say, for example, with obviously without giving any spoilers or anything like that, say Honor Among Spies, for example, in terms of the I don't mean cast it, but in terms of the amount of characters and things you've got, would you think about that? Would you look at, I mean, obviously budget always plays a big part of these things, doesn't it, as well?
Well, it would be cheap. I mean, if we're thinking about it, practically speaking, it wouldn't be expensive to do. I mean, relatively expensive. Um, but I mean, that wouldn't. I mean, as I said, if I was asked to write a script, or okay, so what would I do? I would do. I would look at, as I said, if it's going to be 6 episodes, I'd look at 6 little synopses, the individual episodes, and I probably do. Like those pitch documents. Have you seen those?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably do that.
Where you sort of lay out what you would like it. So
Yeah,
tone,
loads and loads of pictures. and who you think might be, who you think might be,
And the tone and
yeah,
comps, you'd be comping it
tone, the comps, exactly, all that stuff.
to other
Yeah,
shows and different bits and
yeah,
pieces. But
yeah.
so are you hoping that it gets optioned by somebody at
Of
some
course I
point?
am. Are you crazy?
Why would you
Oh
not?
no, Wayne, I don't want that to happen.
So, I'm joking aside though, so many books do get optioned, but obviously, just because it's been optioned doesn't mean it's ever going to get made. There's so many that get optioned and then you never hear
Yeah.
anything about. It's such a difficult thing, as you know from working in the industry. It's one thing, an idea getting picked up, but then to actually go through to fruition and get made, so many fall by the wayside, don't they?
Yeah, they do. But I mean, who knows? Yeah,
You're open to offers, is what you're saying. If anyone's listening there, then
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
get in touch. So, yeah, structure, as you mentioned, it's a massive part of what you do, and we did touch on it last time. But for people who may not be fully au fait with the three-act structure, or however you decide to break it down, in terms of insight and incident and all the rest of it, if someone's come into this completely new from the structure thing, I mean, most people think they've kind of got a rough idea. I think most people instinctively know to a certain extent in terms of a beginning, a middle, and end.
Yeah.
Um, but how should people be thinking about it? What's an easy way for people to start thinking about structure initially when they approach it? And you kind of touched on it earlier on, you talked about motivation, because I know that's a huge part of people having a
Mm.
protagonist that's just way too passive.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. No, and that's so common. Well, I mean, I'm probably said this before, but I mean, what I do, and it took me a while before I worked out how to do this, is I draw it. So I use these A2 sheets of paper and pencil, and then I do, I do it as a diagram.
Yeah.
Uh, so I split the paper into a quarter, a half, and a quarter. So with vertical lines and a horizontal line running through. And then obviously I have a midpoint line. So you'd say it's quarter, 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 quarter. Okay,
Yeah.
because the middle is twice the size of the two act one and
Yeah.
act
Yeah.
three. Um, and I work it out. I draw it. So I write like scribble in little pencil things of what happens in each act, and it also means I can move things around a bit. Um, so you obviously you need to have events. You need to have things going on during the course of the narrative. But there's this great big argument about, oh, we don't need to structure things, it's all going to be fine. It isn't,
No.
because it's like you couldn't, if you put beautiful clothes on a hanger, they're fine. If you take the hanger away, they drop on the floor in a heap.
Yeah.
And the structure is the hanger. I
Yeah.
mean, a building has to have a structure,
Yeah.
otherwise, the bricks don't stick to it. So it is absolutely fundamental to the narrative. It's got to be in place. So I would, I mean, if I didn't know anything about anything, I would, look at Sid Field,
Yeah.
because he's the guy who sort of, started looking at things diagrammatically and just, work it out like that. But I think lots of creative people benefit from seeing the structure visually because it's a picture.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you say, they can think of it as more of as a shape.
Yeah, exactly. It's a shape. It's a picture. Exactly. It's not just like a load of words.
I think the other thing as well is, like, there's always this big thing about Save the Cat or whatever, which comes up in every screenwriting thing or whatever that
Yeah,
you approach. And I know, lots of people hate it for lots of reasons, which I fully understand about some of the things. It's quite prescriptive as regards on page 38, this should be happening and all that kind of
yeah,
stuff. But I think the thing that I kind of took from Save the Cat more than anything else, and I think it's that you can kind of use this when you get somebody that would say, I'm really, really creative and I think outside structure and I do this. And it's like, the thing is, once you start looking at it, even on what seemingly seems to be the most experimental avant-garde film or
yeah,
whatever, or thing that you've seen, they've all got some semblance of that structure. Even the things that you think, oh, they're really or
Yeah,
that's really out there. That hasn't got, and it's like you can demonstrably show that it does. That's the thing with it for
yeah,
me. It's like,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, listen, Wayne, a cell has structure.
yeah.
It's as basic as that. I mean, I think, why should a story not? I mean, it is a cell. It has to have a shape.
And I think the other thing that, I mean, part of my day job is editing video, and again, what you kind of learn is the huge difference that where you put something in relation to other things, how
Yeah,
much it
yeah,
can impact someone's experience of it, and the
mm,
meaning of something, and how it lands. Well, it can be the difference between getting a laugh and making somebody cry. It might be the
yeah,
same thing, but just where you put it in the story and what you put before and what you put after
yeah,
it
yeah.
changes the power of it. And once you start, if you look at something like video editing, but it's the same as when you edit a book or anything else, but with video editing it's very easy to see because you can literally just drag a scene, or you can drag a certain clip or whatever, and you put it in front of it where before it was after it, and you're like, oh my god, that completely changes
Yes,
the
yeah,
meaning of this thing. And I think it's no different with when you're writing a book. You kind of have to, when you step back and you do your edit, you do kind of, one of the things I try to do, sort of the second draft or the third draft or whatever, is when you're looking at it and you're trying to take that step back and think, hang on, how should I feel at this point, or how do I want
yes.
my reader to feel at this point?
Yeah, which is like such an important question. And I mean, that's the save the cat thing, is
Mm,
you have to have some sort of emotional, movement within, otherwise, you can't be static within a scene. Something has to happen.
yeah, totally. So one of the things, I mean, and I don't know whether this is relevant, Merle, or whether you've been in writers' rooms and things before in the past with your TV job, or whether it's, you've kind of mainly written on your own or in small groups or whatever. But a writer's room, again, this is something that we hear lots of, particularly in American
Yeah.
shows and different bits and pieces. You tend to have this idea of a writer's room. Have you spent any time in a writer's room? And for the uninitiated, what is that actually like, and what did you kind of learn from the experience?
Okay. So, all right. Okay. So there's one particular one, and we were in a building in Rathbone Place, near Charlotte Street,
Yeah.
and we were in this like boardroom there, and we were working on a young adult TV series,
Oh, yeah.
and there was the American producer, and the way it works is you sit in this room all day long, okay, and you sort of like, you're talking, and they're coming up with ideas and coming up with ideas. And at the end of the day, the producer came in and he would say, "What have you got?" And then you would pitch the ideas of, what
Yeah.
you come up with. And then you go home and then, and you divvy up all these ideas. And then you go home and then you write up the ideas and then you bring them in the next day. And it was sort of kind of like being in a sausage factory, not
Yeah.
like being in a sausage factory. And out of that, I mean, it was fun, and it really, really was fun. And a friend who I made, or we got very close there, we called ourselves Scum One and Scum Two because we couldn't decide who was the most, pitiful and pathetic of us. But it was that was sort of interesting and challenging. And then I was in a writing team, and in when I did another project, and then everybody just used to scream at each other the whole time, and then get drunk after.
So how did was it a case? How did ideas? How did you decide on whose idea you were going to choose, or what
In
what
that
kind of got
particular,
moved forward? Was it literally
that
who
was
shouted the
who
loudest?
shouted the loudest, and then the director did what she wanted and ignored everybody.
So it's kind of a waste of time anyway.
Yeah, so that was sort of chaotic. But okay, the way to do it, I had, and it was a privilege actually. I went on uh there was something called pilots like years and years ago, and it was like a European initiative, and where they were developing TV series. And John Wells, who developed ER, was
Oh
there,
yeah, yeah,
and he explained exactly how to do it. And the way they do it is very, very, again, very structured. They spend like weeks or a few weeks, set amount of time brainstorming. So they'll brainstorm character ideas, and then they'll brainstorm, disease of the week ideas.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they just like come, and then they come up with tons and tons of sheets of paper, which they put up, all over the place. And then after they've done the brainstorming bit, they start connecting the character stories with the, disease of the week story. So and then they divvy up the ideas, and then they, have a, everybody gets a go at rewriting or writing each other's ideas. And what's kind of interesting is you forget who came up with what idea, because it does become a group thing.
Yeah, you're breaking the story, as they call it, together, and then go off and do the actual mechanical bit. You kind of divvy that bit up.
Yeah, so I mean that is effective, and in fact, when I was at I did some teaching at London College of Communications, and they're still doing that. They write for an existing show, and they show the people on the course exactly how to do it.
That's good, yeah. That's a good way of doing it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you could like slot in and do it if you had to.
Yeah.
And see how it kind of works. I mean, the other thing with American shows as well is, well, not all American shows, but those kind of shows is there's hundreds of episodes. So
yeah, exactly.
The fact that you just have to keep coming up with stuff.
Yeah. But okay, well, another thing I learned was in the first series of a long running show is they just develop character. They have small stories.
Yeah.
And but they use them to explore, these characters.
That's interesting, yeah, because then they've got more scope. A bit like we've been talking about with building on in terms of if you're writing a series, that second book is easier from the point of view you have to do less character work.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And you can just crack on and push the story forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think I read somewhere, in fact, that a writer's room is like a dinner party, and you want to have different people, there to reflect different angles and different types of personality. And then, and again, probably like a party, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I should imagine it's like a band or anything else. It's chemistry, isn't it? It's getting that chemistry right.
Yeah.
And finding all the different personalities and saying, oh, well, Merle's really good at that. She's good at comedy. So and so's good at that, and doing it and splitting it up like that. Absolutely. So kind of in general, how has would you say your experience in the TV industry helped you in the world of publishing? Has it made any difference? I know you talked about your actual process, but in terms of your outlook, how you approach it, and what have you found to be the biggest challenge so far in your publishing career in terms of writing books?
The thing I like about television is that you get the gig, you write the script, you send it away, and that's the end of it. Okay, whereas with a book, the writer is expected to sell the book.
Yeah.
Which just like seems to me to be like like, oh yeah, what, that as well. So that's a huge difference. And which I mean didn't occur to me before, but the writers are supposed to have some interesting story about them, and about their life and stuff. Then I mean, they're not just they're not just writer.
I know, but that. Which seems, to me, that seems strange because the whole, not for, obviously, you don't get me wrong, you do get some people that have had incredible, exciting lives and then they turn to writing. But a lot of writers, the reason we write is we write exciting things because, and we often observe, like you mentioned earlier on, we'll be talking to somebody and we think, oh, that's interesting. I'll take that and I'll use that in one of my stories. It's very rare that you pull in all these really exciting things from your own life. That's, I mean, apart from anything else, when do we get the time? We're too busy sitting down on our own writing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a sort of so I find that quite odd and strange, and you
just have to sort of manufacture a personality to help you go out. And I mean, I'm thinking of getting like a really, maybe start dressing in a really outlandish way, or get a big silly hat or something. Just something. I think you've got to have something these days. You've got to have a hook. Maybe
but
that's it. Have a hook.
you have a look. Okay, so when the first book came out, I wrote an article about 10 things I want readers to know about me, and obviously I did it because the publisher told me to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
But a screenwriter is never going to be asked to do that.
Yeah, yeah, you get. I think the other thing with it is as well, I should imagine. I mean, I haven't worked in TV like that in the way that you have with the writing and stuff, but I should imagine in the main, like joking, you said you don't do anything speculatively, but in TV, you pretty much, unless you're writing a script or whatever, which I know is different, but most things, I'm right in thinking most bits of the process that you do get paid for. If you're
Yeah,
asked to do some writing, you're going to get paid for it in some way, shape, or form, I should imagine, which
yeah,
isn't the case when you're writing a book.
no,
It's like, we need you to do another draft. Okay, how much do I get paid for doing another draft? Oh, you
yeah,
don't get paid anything. You just get paid what you were going to get paid in the first place.
exactly, yeah. No, absolutely. So well, of course, because the production costs are much higher in television, so they have to sort of do more development.
Yeah, yeah. But even so, as you say, I think it's just what you kind of become used to as well. I think the publishing industry just kind of gets away with that. And the same goes for when, people get like a 2-book deal. And this has come up lots of times on the show, but they'll get a 2-book deal or a 3-book deal or whatever it is. And the first book, great, love the first book. Let's sign them on the basis of that and the basis of that. And then you present the second book or the idea for the second book or whatever, depending on how you do it. And they go, no, I don't want that one. You write me another one, and it's like,
Yeah,
well, you just have to do it if you want to fulfill the contract.
yeah, yeah. So it's a funny old business.
Yeah, it's different. But
Yeah.
in general, this is the second book. Has anything have you changed other than your actual process? But I'm talking about how you look at it or how you view it or anything. Or do you think you'll be doing anything different going forward?
Well, there's supposed to be a third book.
Yeah,
No, I just because I mean, there are also in the second book. There's things I've got to tie up because
yeah,
I left some loose threads which need tying up.
yeah.
I don't think so. I just think it's like kind of more of the same.
And are you working on that next book? I know you're not going
I've
to tell us too
started
much
it,
about it,
yeah.
but and you've
Yes.
approached you, so you kind of got a rough idea of where you're going with it. Well,
Well,
you'll have
okay.
a very good idea.
When I did the first one, the publisher said, "Do you have any ideas for like more for the rest of the series
Yeah,
or whatever?" And I sent them 21 paragraph ideas of what could other books. I said, there's loads of things you could do with these characters,
yeah,
including the one about Ellie spying on his wife.
yeah.
Uh, and that's an idea.
Did they basically pick that? Did they from you?
I picked it, but I
Right.
just said because so on this 2 pages of paper there are 20 ideas of other um other story ideas to do with that with those characters. But again, that's a TV thing because
Yeah.
if you were doing a series of then you come up with loads and loads of episode ideas.
I think that the benefit of doing that as well. I mean, I've talked about this before in terms of plot ideas and coming up with things with books in general. I think a lot of us often jump on the first idea that we come up with and run with it,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's often not the first idea, or the second, or the
No,
third, and sometimes it's not the 10th. But I think that's a really good discipline to have, especially like if you're going like 20 ideas,
yeah.
and then
I
seeing which one really stands out to you.
I am in full agreement. Don't use the first idea, I mean, because you'll come up with a better idea, or you'll have a crap idea and then you'll have a better idea. I mean, brainstorming is, just, having lots and lots and lots of ideas, and then you edit it down. Then you see what you've got.
Absolutely.
One of the things I do is when I am brainstorming, I don't know why I do it. I do 20 minutes. I don't know what's so special about 20 minutes, but it's 20 minutes. And then I just come up with loads and loads of ideas. And then I just, keep doing it until I sort of see what I've got. And then you can, pick and choose. You're not sort of wedded to the first thing that you thought of.
Yeah, because I think that's what we do. I think you're right. I think we do get wedded to it. And I think even more so, I mean, you've obviously got a different process because you deliberately don't just start writing the book anyway. But I think once you actually start writing the draft of something, even if you've only written 3 chapters of it,
Yeah, you're committed. Yeah,
yeah, you feel like you are. And it's harder and
yeah,
harder to let
absolutely.
go of
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely. And in fact, I mean, oddly, that's why when I do the real early development stuff, I do it in pencil because it doesn't seem so set.
Yeah.
I'm not committed to it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I
But
know what you mean.
I mean,
Psychologically,
yeah.
yeah.
And once you've done 3 chapters, I mean, that's a body of work, and you don't want to chuck it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I've basically, with the draft that I'm on now, I mean, I essentially took out about 20,000 words. No exaggeration,
Really?
about
Yeah.
20,000 words. I mean, I just stuck them in. Another great thing about Scrivener is I just dragged them out and put them in
Yeah, me
another
too.
folder. And
Yeah,
then
and
to
it's
be,
there. It's
yeah,
there. It's not like you haven't thrown it away, but you just it's just sitting there.
yeah. And
Just
to be fair, I have some of it's actually come back out because I'm like, oh, actually, no, I can use that chapter now, or I can use that scene or elements of it, and I've been able to take it out. But I kind of had to take it out just so I could sort of see where I'd gone wrong. If
yeah.
you know what I mean. Go, okay, now go back to that fork in the road and we'll go somewhere different because that didn't work out, sort of thing. Which
So
must sound absolutely
frustrating. Yeah.
horrifying to you because that's not the way you do it. But
Yeah, it is horrifying to me.
what a colossal waste of time.
Yeah.
Um, so, as we kind of wrap things up, if you were starting your career again, is there anything you would go back and tell your younger self?
Okay, I would, besides getting Scrivener,
Yeah, that's true.
um, I would. Okay, so as a writer, you're always going to meet people who put you down or put you or your work down. Okay,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I would say to my younger self, be prepared for that
Right.
because
So is that
you know
something you faced, is it, along the way?
yeah, I mean, as I said, even I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I mean, somebody, I got, I mean, you're always going to get bad reviews for your
Always.
work,
Yeah.
always. Okay, people who hate it and
Charles
whatever.
Dickens has got bad reviews on this. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and I just think uh, I saw a friend of mine last week, and we were talking about somebody else that we knew who, when my friend, he published his first book, and then he got some horrible email, and we agreed that there's always people who want to write but haven't got around to doing it.
Hmm.
They're the people who are going to rubbish you.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's it. Yeah.
yeah. So just bear in mind there are those people who are going to try and rubbish you, and just to just tell them to or just don't engage.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, I mean, I'm not. I'm too much of a wimp to usually say it to the person.
Oh, go
But
on.
there's been many a time when I've felt like saying, "Oh,
Yeah.
I must remember to go and review your book." Oh, that's right. You've not written one.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, exactly. No, but that's it. And as I said, somebody sent me a message last week, and it was just like, "Oh, your book's too linear," or something like that. And I did think to myself,
They sent you a message
yeah,
to tell you
yeah,
that.
you
Oh my
have a
God.
go, you do it.
Oh my God. I mean, I was talking to somebody about this the other day about negative reviews and things in general anyway. I mean, maybe it's because, in fact, it's almost certainly because I write, but I don't know. I think even before I had a book out or anything else, if I really don't like something, I can't be bothered to go onto Amazon and give it a bad review.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
thing is really, I'll only review something if I like it, and then I
yeah.
give it a good review. The only time I think I would ever do that is if it was absolutely atrocious and it literally made me angry and I thought, how is this even a thing and is it in the
Okay,
world?
yeah,
Maybe I might do it, but even then, to be honest, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably just tell
yeah.
people to their I'd probably word of mouth, I'd say don't read that, it's terrible. But to actually be bothered to go on, and some people, it's just, if you look at all the reviews they leave,
Yeah.
they just like leaving
Yes,
horrible reviews.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's like, it becomes a sort of like a hobby to say horrible. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I would tell my younger self that and it's not just reviews, it's just Oh, people who sort of say, "Oh yeah, I bought your book, but I couldn't be bothered to read it." Okay, fine.
Who are these people? They've got no filter. That's my thing. I mean, the one. I mean, I haven't actually. Well, I don't think I've talked about it on the podcast, but last year I went to Harrogate and I did the author dinner thing that they
Oh
do,
yeah,
which
what was
where
that
they've got
like?
It was entertaining. I'll put it that way. I mean, basically, I won't say the author that got put on the table because he was a really really nice guy and he got treated really really badly. So you kind of go on the table and there are copies of whoever's hosting the table. There's copies of their book on the table, which is nice,
Okay.
the latest book or whatever. And in the case of this person like had a special proof out, so you sit down and you're like, oh, this is nice, you got this, and you get to sit and chat to the author and everything. But
Yeah.
some of the people that were on the table, oh my God! So the first thing is some guy comes back to the table and goes, I've just been over there to that other table and swapped this book for
Oh
so and so's book because I
no,
wanted that.
no. Oh my
This is in
God.
front of the author.
Oh my
But
God.
then to make it worse, somebody else on the table said, "Oh, can you do that?" And he got up with his and he
No.
marched off to another table. Um, I couldn't honestly. I was angry. I couldn't believe it. And then he came back, and this author actually said, "Oh, thanks a lot for that." This guy came back. He came back to the table, really shoulders down, saggy shoulders. Basically went, "Oh, they wouldn't swap with me. I've got to keep it."
Gosh,
This is
gosh.
to the other. So yeah, and obviously neither of those people that did that. There's no way in a million years that either of those have ever written a sentence, let
Yeah,
alone a book or anything. They've obviously
no.
got no idea what goes into it.
Terrible. I'm not doing that.
But oh my God,
That's awful. I
it's
mean, that is awful.
it's all. I mean, he took it relatively well. I mean, I'd have been absolutely seething.
Me too.
It's just
Well, yeah,
rude.
it
Just
is rude. Exactly. So why? I mean, it is rude, and it's. I mean, why do authors have to go through this? God,
I know,
you're
I
too
know, I know, I
bad.
know. It's
On top of everything else.
see, if there's people listening, this is don't let us put you off writing a book, but just bear in mind you do have to
Yeah.
suffer the slings and arrows or whatever however the saying goes.
Yes.
But it's all worth it in the end. So you're kind of working. Hopefully, you're working on book 3 at the moment.
Yeah.
And anything else that takes your fancy. But
Yeah.
just remind people where they can find the latest book and more about you
Oh,
online.
well, you can go to Daunt's in Marylebone High Street.
Absolutely, it's on the
Right
table.
there. It's on the table. And apart from that, I mean, Amazon. It's in quite a lot of bookshops apparently at the moment. So, yeah,
And get it ordered. Order it to their library. Order it to their bookshops.
yeah,
Anyway,
exactly. Yeah, order it. Yeah, it's all over the place.
and
Hopefully,
it
yes,
brilliant. And it's out right now, so people should
it's
go and
out
check it out.
right now. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for coming on Joined Up Writing, Mel. Really appreciate it. Great to have you on again, and good luck with the next book as well.
But thank you, Wayne, and it is really it was fun talking to you.
Joined up writing.
Okay, there you go. Thanks again to Merle, and you can buy Honor Among Spies right now in all the usual places, and I'll put all of the links in the show notes. That's it for this week, other than me reminding you to make sure you subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, YouTube, or wherever else you get your podcasts from. There's a lot of places nowadays, and that way you can have the podcast downloaded automatically every week. And also remember to leave us a nice rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to the show, because it does help other people find it, and keep recommending it to your pals. So thanks for listening this week. I'm Wayne Kelly. Happy writing, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.